Donor Game Boy, check. Replacement shell, check. IPS display kit, check. Let's get started. This video is sponsored by PCBWay.com, suppliers of quality PCBs. Instant quoting and rapid turnaround on all of your orders. It's more than PCBs with CNC and 3D printing. PCB prototype the easy way with PCBWay.com. This original Game Boy is working, albeit with a damaged display and discoloured and scratched case. So let's get this thing opened up right now. Upon removing all of the screws, there is a ribbon cable that needs to be pulled out of the connector on the main board. Now that the Game Boy is in two parts, you can see the display and associated circuitry along with the speaker. If you plan to use the same case or buttons, you'll need to remove this board, but be mindful, some IPS kits don't come with a speaker, so you'll need to keep the original one to hand. On the rear part of the Game Boy is the main board and cartridge edge connector. Since I'm swapping the case, I'll need to remove this now. There are a couple of screws holding the headphone socket in place, along with a couple of screws holding the main board in place. Then lift out the entire assembly, taking care not to damage the wires that are connecting the boards together. Not all cases come with new battery terminals. If yours doesn't, you'll need to pop these out and most likely give them a clean. This main board is pretty grubby, so before I place it in the new case, I'm going to give it a once over with some alcohol. Great, nice and clean. Time to install in the new case. I'm going to reuse the original buttons since they are a better quality than the ones supplied with the new case. This board has lots of screws to remove. Interesting, this display has a scratch on it, so this Game Boy must have spent some part of its life with a missing plastic screen cover. Okay, time to salvage and clean the original buttons. The new display is fixed inside a plastic bracket with the included double-sided tape. and then the display control PCB is attached to the rear of the plastic bracket, also using the included double-sided tape. The new IPS display is slightly larger than the original. As such, depending on the replacement case, or if you're using the original case, you'll need to trim it a little bit. As you can see, I'm only taking off a couple of millimeters all of the way around. I tried to cut it as neat as I could, but the screen cover will hide the cut edges. The screen assembly and bracket didn't quite fit flush in my case, and here I made a huge schoolboy error. I cut this post without checking if it was used when screwing the case together, and guess what? It is. But anyway, the case, as you'll see later on, it still went together pretty well without that post. If you have the same issue where your bracket doesn't quite fit, I'd recommend filing the plastic off the bracket a little bit with a small file, instead of the mistake that I made. The screen cover supplied is glass, which is a little tougher than the original plastic version. So stick that in place, but leave the protective film over the front of it for now. Peel the protective film off the display, flip the case over and insert the screen assembly. Before moving on, it's a good idea to check for dust behind the display, as it's easier to remove now than when the Game Boy is fully assembled. Next, insert the buttons and the silicone membranes. Insert the small ribbon cable from the display board and secure the large board in place with screws. Next, connect the larger ribbon cable to the Game Boy mainboard. I found this quite challenging due to the short length of cable, which yielded not very much workspace. A tip here is to test the Game Boy and new display before screwing the case back together. The image quality is fantastic and the backlight makes it pure pleasure to play. Okay, finally, screw it all back together. Brightness is adjusted by scrolling the scroll wheel up and down. To change the colour scheme, press the scroll wheel on the left hand side of the Game Boy. Pressing and holding the wheel brings up a menu with the options to adjust the horizontal and vertical position of the display. This is a great feature since if the display was not aligned centrally within the Game Boy, you can correct it in software. This menu also contains a pixel effect and an option to display the battery level and the ability to change the colours. side by side, the original minus its guts, and the new case, display and original mainboard. One thing I'll say about the battery LED on this IPS kit is that it's super bright. In fact, in my opinion, I think too bright. So at some point I'm going to open up the Game Boy again and put something in front of the LED to reduce its brightness.